Get deeper into today's agenda, there are a couple of things that I want to go over. One is, oftentimes after having the afternoon to think about and reflect on the activities and conversations of the day, there are aha moments, there are questions that may not have shown up in the evaluations, there are things that you are considering. So I want to start today by first giving you an opportunity to kind of debrief and those items and issues from yesterday. So reflect on who would like to share.
Items from yesterday? Items from
Eric?
yesterday? The initial will, I really, the parts that we can control, how it's centralized, those first three aspects, how much control we actually have over that, and then what kind of goes on beyond that.
Others?
Our school-wide focus this year is writing, and one of our activities at PLC is a few weeks ago, we spent time looking at student work, and we graded, we did an activity where all teachers graded the same samples, and there were some discrepancies in their grading, and we had discussions about that, and they expressed the need to see samples and see how they were graded. So the performance standard activity yesterday really got me thinking we need more of this for our teachers, especially in writing. It ties into our school-wide focus, so I think that's something that we're going to move forward and do in conjunction with our curriculum team at the district level, is starting to create some of those performance standards, not only for our teachers to see, but for our students to see as well, so they can see samples of writing before they even do it.
Others?
I enjoyed kind of along the lines of what you said about shifting your focus of what you can control, working with administrators that feel at times that things are being pushed from the state or from the district and they have no power, being able to help shift their view and finding ways that they can have power to do whatever it is we're working on.
Interestingly enough, 2 weeks ago, I was in with another cohort in the state. And when we did that activity with the charts, a lot of the control was low or no. And what the participants said at that point is that what you have to understand is that a lot of this is given to us, either from the state or the district, so we don't have any control over it. But in that same cohort, I had a group of district central office administrators who are participating as well. And when they had an opportunity to speak, what they said is that, you don't understand. We don't have any control because all the implementation happens at the school. So the school leaders are saying we have no control because it's given to us. The district leaders are saying we have no control because we're not the one to implement it. And so what I really want you to take from this is that when you start to think about things differently, you find more control. When I think about standards as performance and content, I find more control. When I think about assessments as formative and summative, I find more control. So sometimes the perspective with which we approach a topic limits the control that we ultimately see. And our goal is to change some of that. Other thoughts?
Just the quality assessment system and the focus and what we did with that yesterday was very powerful to me because I just long believe and I still believe that is the key element is having effective assessments, both formative and summative, in order to do everything else, to do your planning, to do your instruction, to do your differentiation. And that's the thing that we find that we are lacking in so much. And so some of the perspectives that were brought out in the article that we read and the chart that we analyzed at the end, I think is going to be very powerful in helping to begin the process of our teachers or continue the process of our teachers changing their way of thinking regarding formative assessments, which is all a huge challenge, right?
Others? Anybody? Anybody who, not to call out anybody?
I was talking to James earlier, and when I went to have a conversation with him, he said, wait, and it immediately exited my brain, whatever I was about to say. And I think that it has something to do with perspectives. And because that was we spent a lot of time in Unit 2 talking about the different perspectives. And as I sit here listening, you guys know that I'm a classroom teacher. And I'm listening to him talk about low control and no control. And I'm like, okay, so these administrators don't think they have control. What about us? And it's not that sort of us and them thing, but when I filled out my diagnostic, I was like, low control, low control, low control. But just like, in the end, I think what I learned yesterday was we all have our own ability to make it work for us and for our students. And what I think I was trying to talk about earlier was the chart, the William chart, integrating assessment with instruction, because my perspective in this room is from the classroom. And I watch you model engineering effective discussions, tasks, and activities. And I'm thinking that as leaders, in the system, we need to be better models for instructional coaching. And that's, I think, where I was going initially.
How many of you have seen that game Hot Potato? That's what I'm reminded of when we talk about issues of control at school.
The what?
I've already related to, I had central office people say, we don't have any control, we don't implement it. The control belongs to the principal. The principals are saying we don't have control, it belongs to the central office. Everybody thinks, both principals and superintendent and central office staff, that the teachers have more control because they are the ones doing it in the classroom. And the teachers are saying, I don't have any control because my principal is there. So what we're doing is that same game of hot potato with issues of control. And so we're gonna continue working today to help us find areas that we can control more of the implementation in those targeted areas that helps us move more towards the picture that is being developed by the Mr. Will. Any final comments before I move on? The second thing that I want to be mindful of is that in the evaluation yesterday, I saw a lot of, it's about time. It's about time now I'm really engaged, now I'm really interested because we're talking about stuff at the school level, we're talking about stuff in the classroom. I've been waiting for this for 2 units and we didn't get to it, so I'm glad. This is why I came here, this is what I think is more rewarding. This is what I thought this was all about. And I think it's in part because of what we said about the Mr. Will. It is focused at the school level. But there's a danger in this, guys, that I want you to be mindful of. There is some really important information in Units 1 and 2. And I don't want you to be so caught up with the fact that now we're talking about what's happening in the classroom that you forget about other aspects of leadership. Understand that this is focusing on the school, but you still have to be a strategic thinker. You still have to understand career and college readiness. Equity must also still be your focus. So while this sounds and feels more familiar to you, don't become so focused on the things of Unit 3 that you overlook the things from Units 1 and 2, and later on 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. We become so focused on instruction that we forget that there's a lot more to being a leader than simply focusing on singularly on that piece. You can focus on instruction and not do so strategically and still get poor results. So while it feels familiar and it feels good, don't forget about the other pieces. The issue is how you balance all of those things together. Now that we're focusing on what occurs in the school, you also have a very unique perspective that should have been created through our study together of Units 1 and 2. Travis.
In Unit 2, we did the little exercise on how much time do we spend on instruction compared to other aspects of the job. And I went and I gave it to my sister, before her, and she figured out about instruction. When you look at it, it's the balance between everything. Because we, our focus as instruction leader is instruction, getting the classroom, increasing the test scores. But in the process of doing that, you have the discipline and the safety and everything else that comes along with it. So it's that balance between the management and the instruction that we have to always keep focused. And when most of the day go through management and haven't seen instruction, we have to change some things. And since that exercise, my secretary now, she has my calendar. Man, she did this last hour, this hour, this class. You know, she going where I have that balance now. Where I'll focus more on one aspect and not another.
Anyone else? Okay, let's continue moving. We have some unfinished business from yesterday. So we ended yesterday with you completing your assessment inventory, but we did not have time to discuss all of the pieces of your assessment inventory. And so what I want to do now is to give you an opportunity to kind of discuss it, because what I really want you to tune into, we've talked a lot about a quality assessment system. When you look at what you have in your assessment inventory, what does that say about the quality of your assessment system? Is everything you listed there summative assessments? How did you comment on whether or not teachers, students, other stakeholders found those assessments of any value? So take into consideration all of those pieces that you filled out with your assessment system, and I'm going to give you about 5 or 10 minutes to discuss what your findings were when you look over that inventory as a group. You may start.
Through 4, really. Fifth grade kind of somewhat does this. We have what we call true comprehension assessments. They're cold read assessments, and the questions that follow are very closely aligned to our Part A, Part B, with evidence, and they have a constructive response, short answer at the end. And they're given about every 2 weeks on average. And so if the focus is informational text, and we're pulling a lot of those informational standards, then we give an assessment on Friday, and it's at the end of the unit, and then next week we move on to
so there's not
fiction.
there's not a day to reteach. Or
Yeah, you're
even-
not going to go back and reteach that information. So it depends. Now, if you're using that assessment, if it's a 4-week unit and you give it after 2 weeks, then you're hitting the same standards and skills. And yes, it could be used formatively, but I think it depends on what's coming up. I think that what's really helpful for our teachers is their informal formative assessment, and then the math, Eureka Math exit tickets. You teach the concept development, the kids do the exit ticket, you go around however you check it, and then when they work on the problem set, you pull a small group right there and there and reteach that to them.
So so the timing of it is issued
I
by
think
the
the timing
district.
is that,
And so you all don't have any flexibility on when you give it.
not for a lot of those assessments, no.
So the window, the testing window is determined by the district. And the window
It's got
is
day 8 or day 9. It's like, yes.
it's so they tell you the exact date. They don't give you like a 2-day, 3-day window.
I would say they'll tell you, they'll recommend day 8. They want us to wait till the end of those 2 weeks to make sure that the skills are really taught. You can't give it on day 4 because the kids are not ready for it.
No, but what if you gave the assessment on day 7 and you had day 8 to review it?
That's assuming the teachers can grade it that quickly. And there's also an extended response, but maybe if they graded the multiple choice only, and then you had day 8 and day 9 to reteach, that could improve that process. It's a good idea. It's a good point.
I mean, I can't see it being a lot of variation within the week. where you could double something and gave that one extra thing. Because if you're going to use, like you were saying, if you're going to use it formatively, you need to be able to review that information, reteach whatever those low skills are at that moment before you go on, because then the time is not maximized and you don't benefit from that information. By the time it comes around again, it's a whole new reteach, a whole new lesson rather than a reteach.
It is, and I think we see that in math too with some of our, y'all use Eureka Math? You know, we don't wait till the middle or the end of the module to give an assessment because that's too much time. And teachers need grades. We need people progression to have so many grades in the grade book. So
what I've asked teachers to do is, you know, they have what do you call it? The problem sets. So the teachers are working, so they may get through, I don't know, they may have like 5 or 6 questions on the problem set or whatever. They use a couple of those for guided practice and maybe a couple of those for graded, gradable opportunities, but they may not grade the entire problem set. It may be something that is, you know, a portion of it. And there's a rubric assigned to how much they should know at that juncture. So I mean, that takes another step, but you know, if you a lot of those problem sets hold them accountable for more than one standard. So the repetitive skills that they should acquire, that's a no-brainer. You and I have to give them credit for that, you know. But then the newly introduced skills, what have you, may be just assessed to determine how much more do I need to instruct, do I need to pull a small group. So you have to kind of get creative with that too.
And I'm just thinking like those assessments, so we assess every 3 to 5 lessons depending on kind of where there's a break in the scale.
And it determines, each unit is different.
And I think there could be some reteaching that happens, but if the skill shifts completely, which Engage New York is known to do,
well, but a lot of
it's not used like it could be.
But here's the thing though, even when the skill shifts, it still has a progression. So it's you know, it's all building. You have to know this amount to be able to perform the next amount.
And maybe in their concept development, they could hit some of the prerequisite skills, maybe that haven't been mastered as much on those assessments, or even calendar math. We have a 10-minute calendar math session built in. That might be a good place to do that too. Just having conversations with these teachers about, hey, how are we using this stuff? Let's
because
get better
that's
how
the
we
difference.
use it.
I had to sit down with our teachers, and then I actually went to the training that they had one in Chicago for Eureka Man, and so you could see the progression of their assessments and how everything builds upon each other. And then I mean but you have to also train teachers on what's a gradable item.
The IO for the data for their SLTs. You know, we all use that. It was really easy for them to get the information, and I like the fact that when I go into meetings and stuff, I can pull that up, and we can have all the information when the parent is there to talk to them about that. And but as far as being useful,
Okay, this way,
I find
please.
alternative data is
I
useful.
want to add
somehow.
to your conversation. I want you to think about the things we talked about yesterday that should be in a quality assessment system. My question to you is, what's missing? What should you add to your present inventory to move you towards? Not saying you're not close already or not saying you're not already there. What can you add to it to improve the quality of your assessment system? You may start. Question make sense? You just completed this. This is your inventory. This is your list of the present assessments that are found in your school. We talked yesterday about what a quality assessment system should contain. What's missing from here that would move you towards that quality assessment system that we talked about yesterday? And if nothing is missing, say, we got it. But think about the quality assessment system that we talked about yesterday. Think about what you have here. What should be added here? What's missing that would improve the quality of your assessment system?
And who developed them? That's an internal thing, because you can't, it's assessment, measuring, content and skills, we believe are important. Yes, right? Formative assessments, it's this measuring the content and skills we believe are important. It very much should be.
Very much so.
Very much better be. The item type, it can be anything.
I'm sorry, I'm really not feeling
I know.
it. My bad.
That's
I'm
okay.
trying.
Yesterday
I'm
I
not
wasn't
there
feeling, I'm not feeling so good this morning, so I'm trying to make myself get it together. Yesterday it was worse, but today I'm feeling a little better.
yet. I just lost focus there for a minute.
So
Somebody said
data
it was.
analyzed, that would be tier 1 intervention.
Yeah, and
So what did you put right here?
formative classroom assessments, like, just,
Okay,
just
okay, all
everyday things, because it said you have to have some of both, and so,
But
sorry.
I think we would need to find, well, that's too deep, I'm not going into that. All right, so the purpose is to do what?
But basically, it's a checkpoint to see where the kids are, don't you think? Like to
Problem
see where your learning is, yeah. I mean, and to figure out where you need to reteach, where you need whatever. It's all your grades. Frequency is all day, every day.
But if we're putting a system in place, to me, when I think system, I think, what are we doing school-wide, or at least grade level-wide, to get the information, the same information on every kid with the same tool? That's what I'm thinking when
But I
I
don't
think
think
of
you can
system.
with the different, because like Springboard uses all the other things, the math uses all the other things, science uses different things.
But that's what I'm saying, but Springboard is all the same.
Yeah.
Consistent.
Yeah,
Well,
like
if you wanted to make different categories, then you would do formative for English, formative for
that's
math,
what
is
I'm
what you
thinking,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking, like, what is the
If you want to narrow
English
it down
department
more.
doing to get the information, math, that's all.
I got you.
But that's fine every day.
Because like in science, we did labs. That was a formative assessment, because
Yes,
I'm
it
just checking
was.
to make sure you got what's going on.
Before I give you this test,
Yeah,
I'm
make
gonna
sure
give
you
you
know
this
your things.
test.
Data's analyzed. It is, I just call it a checkpoint to make sure the kids know where they're going before you have the big summative test. Are the results used formatively by teachers in the classroom? Yes, they are.
Intervention.
Who needs tutoring? We have a thing on we have a RAM reach out where the teachers pull in kids who need to be a little help, need a little tutoring, because your RTI doesn't cover the current knowledge, it just covers the gaps that they're missing. So if you pull them in and they can work with them on the current things that they're missing. And then the degree to which users find the assessment useful, I would think it would be very useful.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's their everyday bread and butter, yeah. And is assessments reviewed for alignment to the curriculum? Well, yes, because we're checking their tests. But we don't check every little thumbs up, thumbs down, but in observations you do, in a way, because when you go on
Yes.
observations, you see that they're doing it up,
But it's
down.
not on a consistent basis. It's
No.
not like looking at their summative assessments,
Yeah,
those type of
look at their grade books to see what they're putting in there, but that's really not every little formative assessment. So that one's kind of a gray area for me.
I'm gonna put yes, but not all.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think formative is a big gray area because
Put tight. Well, you didn't put anything.
all varied.
I mean-
I'm gonna put varied because I don't know, like how they. I mean, you could fill up 2 pages of the different kinds of formal assessments.
Right.
Formative assessments they use. But you remember when we went to that thing in New Orleans for RTI, the guy at Solution Tree said formative assessments should never be graded.
Right.
And so
Right.
what are we doing to our
Once you
teachers? We
grade
tell them to grade
formative, it
formative
becomes
assessments.
summative.
Yeah, so once you grade it, becomes summative. I think it was better when we did our grades. At that time, I made categories, testing quizzes, labs, whatever, and each one was worth a certain percentage rather than saying a formative and a summative, because you don't grade every little formative thing. And to me, it made my grades a little better balanced. Like projects, project can only be 25% of your grade. So anything that's a project has to go in there. Because I had some teacher who was making projects 300 points, and her tests were worth 50. So, and so that skewed their grades.
Right.
So we kind of done that, and then they went to the formative and summative assessment thing. So that kind of skewed it too, because like they said, if you grade every formative, it's not formative, it's summative.
Right.
Okay, time. This way, please. In terms of what could be added, let's just go around. Give me some highlights of your conversation. Julie.
We said, definitely, like, we have, like, common assessments, we have little more awareness that we know what our kids are being tested at.
Keep going, Rachel.
In Vermilion Parish, we have a very tight assessment system, and our district works very closely with our teachers to align our assessments. However, in the for areas of improvement, performance standards would help us to make sure we understand what it looks like in student work. And the other piece is how teachers are using it. So, for instance, we might have a 2-week cycle in reading block, and it might be on informational text, where at the end of 2 weeks, they're given a test, and it's an outstanding assessment. But if the next week we go to fiction, how can we use that formatively? And we talked about just the day that it's given on. We usually do it at the end of the cycle. If we can bump it up a day to where even if the teachers just grade the multiple choice and not the short answer, they can understand very quickly which standards you might need to reteach before you move on to the next unit.
Christy.
We kind of all the same thing. We talked about performance standards and making sure we have performance standards and performance-based assessments. But we spent a little time talking about formative assessment. I made the comment, I know at our school, I spend a lot of time looking at teachers' tests, some tests. I look at midterms, I look at finals, I look at, unit tests. But thinking about it last night, we talked about, and what we just talked about was, I know teachers use formative assessment in the classroom, because when I go to observe, I know they're using it, but I never look at the types of items that they're using for formative assessment to make sure that they're targeting what they need to be targeting. So that's something that we kind of talked about, how to be more effective at examining maybe formative assessment.
Scott.
Well, the test that I put was primarily high school, you have very little control over, so there's not much that we can do to improve. We give ACT tests, we give EMC tests, we use the data from it, but there's really not much, we don't have much influence over it.
Okay. Daphne and Christy, just kind of separate. I don't want to hit anybody else as I throw it at Scott. I forgot what to be. I'm sorry. I really wasn't going to throw anything. I'm sorry. All right, listen to what Scott just said and think about the conversation we had today and yesterday. He just rattled off a whole bunch of tests that he had no control over. What I need him to do is define the assessments that he can control. So what he has to do to make it a more quality assessment system is find more of those local things that the teachers and I can do together. I don't control ACT. So ACT is not driving what we do here.
But it's 25% of our SBS, and just because I don't have control over it doesn't mean I don't do anything with it.
Yeah, but there are ways to get to the ACT. I am saying I don't control the ACT. But I can help my students do better on the ACT by controlling those things I do have control over. So by me doing in-classroom formative assessments, by me working with teachers on other forms of summative assessments, by me doing those kinds of things, I can improve their performance on the ACT piece. I don't disagree with you. I just need you to find more control that impacts the ACT.
And I'll give you some examples. I mean, we have our teachers embed ACT questions in the program. We just spent $1,600 of Title I money bringing in an ACT expert for a 5-hour course to let 30 of our students have test-taking strategies. What we can't control, I don't worry about it. What we can control, we focus on.
Yes, worry about what you can't control. Just find more ways to impact.
And we do the same thing with EOC. With our EOCs, our district we have a consultant for each of the EOCs, for each of the areas, and they actually had to put out a 1-pager last year, test taking tips and things for our teachers to focus on, which was very, very helpful. And our EOC scores reflected that because they all came up across the district.
All right, I'm going to leave you alone, Scott.
I'm gonna just throw this out there because my sister was a math coach. Do you ACT people know that about 68% of the math problems on ACT algebraically, but if they're struggling, get them to draw the tape diagram. Just had to share because I have that. But I don't know
Sanjay,
anything about that.
your table.
Just basically the formative assessments and addressing them using tier 1 interventions, and those that may need extra help we use in bell ringers at the beginning of the day so that it doesn't take up a lot of instructional time. And then using that information to see if they've reached,
All right, tell me about the end of the day thing.
I guess not so much at the end of the day, but at the end of each period, when the teacher looks at that formative assessment, they can tell if a student has mastered,
Like an exit ticket.
using, whether it's an exit ticket, whether it's, whatever type of formative assessment they have, but they also address it in the bell ringer the next day. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, but I'm hearing, what I'm hearing is very similar to what Scott is describing. Can I have just one sheet? So it amazes me that about 3 years ago, I started using an example of what I wanted teachers to think of when they do formative assessments. It was a group of math teachers. And it amazes me how often I come back to that same example. Scott and Sanjay, come here, since it was your.
If you pick me up and put me in there, it's on tape.
Sanjay is my coach. She's my free throw coach. She's working with Scott to help him improve his free throw shooting.
Mm-hmm.
So, right here. Did you play basketball? Sure. Let me put you a little bit further back. Huh? You did too? All right, you ready? Your job is to improve his free throw shooting. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay, Scott, have at it. Wait, what are you doing?
Well, I gotta watch him.
Huh?
I need to watch and see what he's doing.
Why?
Because if I don't know what he's doing wrong, and I won't be able to help him.
See, that's the mistake we make with formative assessment. We wait, shoot Scott. What did he do wrong?
I don't know.
That's your exit slip. That's the unit exam. The best coach watches when the shooting is taking place. Why am I waiting for a week? All I can do is say he missed it. He was he was short and to the left, right? I can't comment on his stance. I can't comment on his follow through. I can't comment on the arch. I don't even know if he had his eyes open, because I'm not watching him when he was doing the activity. Your formative assessment comes when you are doing this. I'm monitoring what you do when you're working the problem. I'm listening to your conversations when you are working the problems. I am watching you when the learning is supposed to be taking place, not afterwards, because I am limited in what I can provide input on in the after. So, exit slips are a form of formative assessments, but it's this form. And now what I do is tomorrow. The best form of, the closer you can get to here, the more powerful your intervention can be, because the closer you are to the learning experience.
So, because I said it gets addressed in the next day's bell ringer is where.
Doesn't make it wrong.
Because
It doesn't,
just-
because remember, I said yesterday that state exams can be used as formative assessments. But the closer you are to when it is happening, when I see the mistake now and say, wait, let's think about, let's talk about this a little bit differently, that gives me a lot more intervention than waiting until the next day. Now, I'm not saying that exit slips cannot be formative assessments. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that the closer you get to the learning, because exit slips are better formative assessments than unit exams, which are better formative assessments than benchmark exams, which are better formative assessments than, the further you get away from the actual learning process itself, the more diluted the intervention can become. Because all I need to say to Scott now is that it didn't work, try again. Let's keep shooting, as opposed to stand this way, follow this mechanics, those kinds of things. That's what we're looking for in formative assessment. So one of the things you should be thinking about as you think about this quality assessment plan is how close your assessments are to the actual learning when the learning is taking place. The further removed it is, the less impactful it could possibly be.
Okay, so question. If you're giving an exit ticket,
Mm-hmm.
I'm filling it out, I'm handing it to you, and I'm walking out the classroom as the bell just rang.
Mm-hmm.
It's a formative assessment.
It can be, depending on how you use that information, yes.
And so tomorrow, I see that this many are having problems, so I'm going to address it in bell ringer.
Mm-hmm.
And while they are doing it, I'm walking around to make sure they understand.
Mm-hmm. Can be, yes.
Okay.
Remember, I'm not saying that her description was wrong. What I wanted her to think about is how to get closer to, because what I'm thinking, if I'm in the classroom, I'm thinking, what questions are the teachers asking during the course of the activity to figure out where students are in their learning? What's the teacher looking for when they are doing the activity to figure out if they are learning? So if I can be tuned in with you during the learning process, that aids me in formative assessments. Yes, but add to.
Gotcha.
Okay. Tamika.
I just
and
wanted
then-
to add, there's a book called The Fundamental Five by Sean Kane, and when you are as close as you can get to the student when they are working, it's called working in the power zone. That is where you are in the huddle with the kids, flexible enough to hear where the misconceptions are so that you can make the redirections at that point. And I think what you're saying is that our usage of assessment and our perception has been flawed in that we are offering a lot more summative and not being formative to drive our instruction.
Right. Right. Pat.
Oh, I was just gonna, say something about what Scott said. At our school, we were having trouble with teacher-made assessments, and so not being aligned to the standards. So when I was looking at the lesson plans, I asked my teachers to make sure that, they put their standard next to their on their assessments, so that I could be sure that they were aligned to the assessments, whether it be their DOG, their bell ringers, or whatever, so that I could give them proper feedback.
Okay, I need to move on. We are going to move on into areas of curriculum development and instructional materials and syllabi that supports a curriculum framework. What I need you to do is to have the following conversation. 1, how is curriculum typically developed for your school? 2, what are the characteristics or features of that curriculum? 1, how is it normally developed? 2, what are the characteristics or features of that curriculum? You have 3 minutes at your table to discuss.
Characteristics or features, so they give you all a scope and sequence, they provide a scope and sequence for you.
And they even go further in reading. They're like not for every grade level, but first through I don't know about a fourth grade. It's less detailed, but they'll give you daily lesson plans. Like,
What to do, what text to use, what
Yes.
skills, some of the guiding questions.
they'll have the, yes, they'll have the,
Technology embedded? Not so much.
well, they'll have flip charts.
Flip chart
They'll
technology.
have
lesson, but
graphic
not-
organizers,
No,
you know.
but I mean technology though, I mean like, video, no, not too much.
Not too many, no. But the teachers will go and add some of those things,
That's
yes.
good. I mean, anything that you can get to help, because a lot of teachers just don't know where to start.
Right. I had a fifth grade teacher, so we teach the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in fifth grade, and they
Don't you
struggled.
love it? Don't you love that book?
They,
It's like one of my
I
favorite
started
books.
it, and I'm so not a fantasy person, but I need to finish it.
Oh man, let me tell you something. That book, if nothing else, it awakens your love for Christ, because it so parallels. And I'm not gonna give it away, but you need to read it at the end,
Okay.
and you'll see
Okay.
what happens.
Okay. Well, maybe that'll be my Christmas project. If
that book
I can get through my NISL, I'll do that.
Babe, I was reading that book every. Okay, I can't go ahead, because I can tell you 53 stories. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
But one activity that they do is they read Alice down the rabbit hole or something like that, and they parallel it to, like, they do some comparing and contrasting, and the dialogue is difficult for the fifth graders. And so one of our teachers, they added in, they went and find a little video where you could hear the it was Alice in Wonderland. She did a little 2-minute video where the students could hear it. So they do supplement, and a lot of times it's good stuff. I don't see anything in there that's fluff, but
Yeah.
as far as features, I would say it's.
But there's so much that you can teach from that book. I hope that they're doing a lot of literary analysis with that. 'Cause
I
there's
think
a
they have room
lot.
to grow there.
There's a lot.
I'll come do a book study with you. We'll go have some coffee
teachers-
and I'll read it.
I love it. She does a really good job. I taught fifth grade for 5 years. That was every year. I did like 9 novels a year. That was like the second one.
I bet they loved it.
Oh,
Because you loved it. That's the difference.
That's yes. Yes. And so kids that didn't have a love for reading, I saw them evolve, and every day they were, can we please, can we just go to the next chapter? We gotta move on. Gotta get out. But I mean, it did provoke. Yeah. And then our librarian was great. They had like this reading program. We used this program that captured that they read so many books that they would get points. And for the course of the year, if you earned over 100 points, you would get your name painted on the ceiling in a star. Okay, that was a huge, like AR based. So it was a huge push for our kids. Of course, the more you read, the higher your fluency, the more points you gain. And so the kids went from reading,
Okay, this way.
lower level.
The curriculum used in your school, how is it typically developed? Just start in and talk. Just give me one item at a time.
They do involve the teachers, they do.
Who selects? Huh? So the curriculum is created at a district level. Okay. What else?
Well, for us, we said more specifically, they do a better job of math and ELA specifics. We're kind of on our own side to go. I walked across the room, I heard it across. You heard it? Yes.
That's because it's your tested subjects.
Exactly.
Okay.
Some people don't realize.
Others.
I'm so learned, you can't really talk to me.
Say again, Julia.
For a lot of electives, they know their standards and what the, final goal or outcome or conventional test needs to be, but they're creating what they're doing differently.
All right, bullet that for me.
Teacher create. In your
The electives.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Anything else in terms of how curriculum is established, created? Okay, let's go to features. What are some of the standard features of your curriculum?
Based on this new standards, and we have some pacing guides.
Hold on. You also say informative? Alicia, what were you saying? John?
They're becoming more and more digital. There's a digital component, or they are interactive with technology.
For example, like our math, if you read the math, that's concept-based curriculum. It's a concept-based approach to mathematics. Our ELA springboard is a backwards design approach in its purest form. When we look at science and social studies, science is also going to be concept-based as well because of the 5E model. Teaching through the 5E model. But social studies is not. Social studies is still basically teaching history lessons.
Okay.
As Jamie said, it's dates and places and events. Not as much as it is the actual concepts of what they're supposed to be drawing from these historical.
So what you're finding, the features of your curriculum vary by content area? Okay. Okay. Okay, so here's what I want you to do next. Find your NISA wheel. Look at the elements of curriculum framework and syllabi and instructional materials that match curriculum framework. And what I want you to think about, to what degree is that process and those features aligned with what you find represented in the NISA wheel. So just take a minute to look at curriculum and syllabi and instructional materials aligned with curriculum. Think about the process that you just described. Think about the features that you just described. To what degree is your current process and the features found in your curriculum align with what you see here represented in the NISA wheel?
I couldn't hear when you said to what degree something. I couldn't hear you when you said what degree to.
What degree is what you just described align? Can I see this for a second?
To the wheel.
To what you find in here for curriculum and syllabi and instructional material.
Degree was the end. Okay.
Curriculum in place. But one of the things that frustrates me, aside from that, that we won't even look at, we won't accept the fact that we can go to New Jersey, we can go to Oklahoma, we can go to Ohio, we can go to Georgia, we can go to these different states who have curriculums for the new generation science standards and take those and use those as our guide. Just hell, it doesn't have to freaking steal it. I don't give a shit. But you can't tell me those. Right? So, but
You're burning our opportunity of being famous.
oh, sorry. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to do the cursing part.
It's okay.
I really had my heart set on being famous through this.
But if you, for example, like one of the things that they insist upon in this district is they insist upon having the weather phenomena with the hurricanes and so forth in like the initial unit because it's during hurricane season. But if you talk to science teachers, there are concepts in there that the students are not prepared for because they're supposed to have, it's supposed to come, that phenomenon is supposed to come later in the order of process. So the idea that we're going to put hurricanes in the fall because it's hurricane season doesn't make any sense because it doesn't follow this developmental sequence that's needed for the students to get all of the, you said, the prerequisites, the prior knowledge, the concepts that they need in order to be able to process that information. And the data will still be there.
What's missing? If anything is missing, I don't want to suggest that there is.
We were just talking about with social studies, well, not really science, but with social studies, textbooks are so outdated that how can you keep your teachers and your students up to speed? But Greg made a good point. He said a textbook is only a resource. You have to look at other things as well.
Alicia, what's missing?
We were just kind of talking more with the science and kind of the flexibility of not being able to utilize other districts with the new standards that they're setting out that our teachers are working with this year in schools. So that's what we were kind of talking about with the hurricane season and being able to teach some concepts during that time and just have that flexibility sometimes to deviate.
Rollin, what's missing?
We had talked about the accountability of when they put it together at the end of the year letter, explaining to the parents and maybe providing the school sequence. But John said, that was what we more accountable because they have to be on track if they don't do that.
All right. So this process is, tell me what you have. Tell me what should be if I am following the initial will. And then let's start generating some ideas about how to move me from where I am to where I want to be. So we've talked about what you do in terms of curricular framework, some of the features that are there. You've compared that to what should be if you are following the initial will. Now let's generate some ideas about how to move from where we are to where we should be with the initial will. We are going to do that by analyzing a unit of study from Massachusetts Department of Education. Don't say it, Michelle, don't say it, just wait. So we are going to analyze a unit of study. And what I want you to do is to analyze that unit for the presence of those things that should be evident according to the initial will. So the unit of study is analyzing an author's style. That should be found in your resource packet. If you would grab that for me, please. Pardon? Yes, pull both of those. One is the curriculum framework and the other one is unit of study. And take it out because I'm going to move you.
And this one, the next one, the next one.
The first thing that I want you to do is to really dig into this model curriculum unit and talk with each other about what do you see present in the unit. Pick it apart. Tell me what is there. Tell me what is contained in this model unit. Discuss the components of it. So talk about what's in it first. Then what I want you to do is to talk about what's in it as it relates to the components found in the curriculum and the syllabi pieces of the initial will. Paying close attention to the desired results, formative and summative assessments, and the structure of the lessons. So, pick apart the unit, talk about the components of the unit. What do you see in this unit? How is it structured? What are the components of it? Let's talk about those things. Then talk about the degree to which you see those things that are reflected in the initial will as it relates to curriculum and framework and syllabi and instructional materials. In that conversation, make sure you pay attention to the desired results, the established goals, formative and summative assessments, and the structure of the lessons. Any questions? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1. Now, wait, before. It's interesting to watch principals do this because a power struggle ensues every time I do this. And Sandy sits there and raises her hand and says, my group is here. So I'm going to take care of that. 1's here. 2's here. I'm trying to use my vacant tables. 3's here. 4's there. Bryce, can I use that table? 5's there. The question that I really want you to engage in as it relates to the framework is this one. When you look at the desired results and established goals, how does that connect to what you see in the framework? So you don't have to go through all of the elements of the framework. Spend more of your time discussing the units.
Almost too much to look at one time. Yeah. It's overwhelming. It's like
Okay, I know that you asked the question, but I'm looking at all of these lessons, and there's not a whole lot of mention, of any kind of assessments in each of these lessons.
At the end of each little lesson, she has a little formative assessment. That's what I was looking at. Okay, so the summative is the analysis piece. That's what I see, the essay.
Okay.
And then the formatives at the end, she has like something about formative for each one.
Well, what about when you get to like pages 25?
The very last ones?
Yeah, like lesson 4, lesson 5, lesson 6.
It says they assess students' close reading answers and participation in the graded oral discussion. That's all it says.
Okay.
So the teacher's going to look at their close reading answers that they do on this sheet.
Throughout each of those lessons.
Yes.
And
participation in a graded oral discussion, which looks like that's what is going to happen on like lessons 4 through 8.
It is a lot. Are they looking at the style of cathedral at any point?
Style of what?
Of the text that they're reading, cathedral?
Well, I feel like they're missing a piece of the
I mean, lesson 4, questions 1 through 4. where is she teaching, she, he, whoever, about, what she can do if you don't understand a word or a phrase while reading? Because it says over here that she provides them with a glossary of terms. Am I getting too into this?
No, you go right on ahead.
I mean,
Where did it say that? At a gloss?
in essential questions and understandings right at the beginning, it says good readers recognize when they do not understand words and choose the best strategy to help them define the words. An essential question is, what can I do if I don't understand a word or phrase while reading?
Mm-hmm.
There is a little mention of word choice when she does that fashion thing. But as far as
Both of them? Okay.
You got all your answers ready? Okay, so how do the desired results and established goals support the ELA standards? Support them well? We like the breakdown? Very helpful to a teacher? Would you categorize the formative and summative assessment opportunities as acceptable evidence and why? Yes and no for some of the formatives, but
No,
the summatives, well, the summatives are essay, so, right?
This is a curriculum embedded performance assessment, so
There you go.
everything is, once they get to finish all of this,
Then they do that.
they do that.
Are we saying, is that a summative?
That's what we're thinking. We're making that assumption. Because it's the performance standard, or pass.
And does it meet all of the requirements from the beginning?
They'll use the media throughout.
To me, it just does not meet the standard. I'm gonna write an essay analyzing his style using evidence from conclusion of the book.
So this is what it's going to encompass.
It should meet all of these standards. Right?
The evidence you're talking about?
Are those the same ones?
Yeah. 7, 4, 7, 1, 7, 3, 7, 5, 7, 2, 7, 6.
7, 5, 7, 2. Solid targets. This is other evidence. 7, 3.
So 1, 2, 5. So it says the performance task assesses these three.
Those 3. The others are ancillary.
One's not even listed.
4? No, 4's not in there. Yeah, 4 is. Yeah, 7.4 is in targeting.
So one word of caution before we move into the discussion. Here's what I don't want. I don't want you to get so caught up in the fact that you may have chosen a different evaluative criteria than the fact that they actually established evaluative criteria. I don't want you to get so caught up in the fact that you would have chosen a different lesson than the fact that they carefully orchestrated their lessons with their essential questions. Does that make sense? I think we get caught up oftentimes that if I would have done it, I would have done it this way. And I don't want you to be so focused on that you miss the structure of what they have and also the power of what they have. That being said, I'm going to be quiet and let you discuss with each other your analysis, your findings, your impressions, things of that nature.
Well, you just shut down what we were talking about. One of the main things that we is the lesson focused on style, but there's nothing specifically in the content standards about style. So we were thinking that maybe you have to read between the lines because establish a style unique to an author. It includes the elements in there with tone, personification, and point of view. So maybe we just got thrown off with the word style, looking for it specifically in the content, or maybe we just have to keep it on because those are the components of style.
Can you repeat what you said?
Who, me? One of the things I specifically got kind of thrown off was the lesson, the whole focus was style. And so I'm looking through the content standards, it did specifically say style, but I came to the conclusion that maybe you have to read between the lines because the components of style are included with the tone, the mood, the point of view. So those components ultimately make that author's unique style. But there's nothing specifically that I could find that focused on distinguishing and identifying author's style. So that's what I took, taking a look back at that. And we were kind of hooked on the fact that like after the first essential question, they were bizarre. And they didn't focus on the actual skill of finding that style. Like one essential question was a reading strategy. And even though it's in the content, would you turn a reading strategy into an essential question when the lesson is about style and identifying style and what is style? So when you said don't get caught in a essential question, that to me was a big misalignment.
Well, I consider the fact that they use a topic of familiarity. They set the relevance using personal style, your own fashion, as a hook to be able to parallel that to writing style. And then allowing the students to develop their writing based on the text and evidence that was a blog to create dialogue and capture what they were learning. There is, however, one standard here, ELA literacy R73, I'm on page 63, it says students complete an analysis of their own fashion style as choice as they make about clothing and emerging understanding what the author's style reflects the deliberate choice he or she makes in the course of writing. We also looked at the title of it is a style, but the desired results don't say style. It talks about how they use the words they use to transform lives using cultural and historical periods, which is what the book is about. I think the title of the unit saying the style of writing, I think maybe 3 off if you look, it talks about thinking ideas for a particular audience and purpose, and that is in the framework, and it's in the lesson. But the title of the lesson, like young people are often saying, it's analyzing the style, because the activities and stuff do talk about style, but it is basically to talk about the experience and understanding culture and historical periods. So that may be why it was iffy for some people.
And this seems like the technology, talking about media, it's missing the point that this is supposed to be
what I understand from the standard, is that it's supposed to be for the student to use the media to produce, publish, update individual or shared writing products. And the way the lesson is designed and what the teacher is using, but the concept is about bringing media to the teacher, to the students, showing a video and having them respond or take information from the video as much as not, and that is not what I'm reading as far as when it talks about the use of technology and what is in the understandings, because even in the understandings, write a blog in a way to publish ideas so that others can read them, add comments, and sometimes provoke new ideas. That is in alignment with the standard, but the actual activity that referenced that did not.
But I think there was enough to have a lot embedded where they hit that standard. Because they didn't utilize that blog once. It was a couple of times. And then it was open. So the students could provide feedback as well as the teacher.
Okay, do me a favor, let's back up and take a bigger look at the bigger picture of the structure of the unit. One of the things you will notice is that the unit is designed in stages. Talk to me about what's found in stage 1. Stage 1. Others, what is found in stage 1?
Where you're going.
Kristen?
What's found in stage, you're talking about stage 1 in the actual text, where it says stage
Yes,
1?
in
That is
standards.
where you're going. What are you looking for? What do you want them to learn? What do you want them to figure out? What do you want them to see?
Okay.
That's what I see in stage 1. They're going to understand what they're
And I also saw that it was differentiated. There were 3 articles. One on level, one below level, and one above level.
So in stage 1, I see the standards as an established goal, which is very broad, and we go into the student understandings and the essential questions, but I think one of the most important pieces is where it says transfer. Students will be able to independently use their learning to, and it goes a little bit more specifically in what they should be doing at the end of this unit. And you can see the connections to all of these things. You can see the connection in the standards, and it talks in 7.3, how individuals influence ideas or events. I think that can be connected to style. And then when you go back to what the students are supposed to be doing in the lessons, you can see some evidence of the connections in all of these pieces.
Now that I'm looking more at it and not focusing so much on the lesson points, I personally like the way they set up the plan as far as you can see the end result in that and where your students need to go. And I find it's pretty specific about each part. I like, for me, I like it because it gives me as a teacher specific, oh, okay, this is what I'm looking for at the end, as opposed to here's the economy standard and here's a few things you can do. I find it really more detailed, and so the planning on the teacher's part is where it really needs to happen, so you can get familiar and imagine what your students are supposed to do with this information.
Others, stage 1, the whole desired results section. What are your thoughts about it?
Looks like the desired results need some complicated.
Jim?
It seemed very clear that you know exactly, as a teacher, you know exactly what you need to be doing or covering and the goals that you're trying to reach. Especially the way it breaks down for student understanding, and it goes into what they'll know and what the skills will be. And then I was saying how much I like the essential questions, because they are just so specific. And this is what a student should be able to do. You know, all the way down to what do I do if I can't understand a word. And, you know, it's an important strategy and skill.
Anyone else?
It's almost like a brainstorming for the unit to get you thinking about, okay, what resources can we pull in to help guide that, this unit that we're gonna be teaching. You know, and it's very, like you said, I like it specific so that it hones in, okay, this is the main thing we wanna get out of it.
What about stage 2? What's found in stage 2?
Performance test and evaluation.
Do you see a link between what's in stage 2 and what's in stage 1? If so, what's that link?
The acquisition section of stage 1 is on the road to performance standards, and that's the part I like about stage 1. It breaks it down even into what the students are gonna learn, and then what skills they learn.
And it connects it to the college and career readiness.
One is what I want from students, the other is my vehicle for getting it. And you should see a connection between the tasks that I'm choosing and the desired results that I want from students. A little bit louder, Jim.
The criteria that they give for the evaluation, it tells you exactly. This is what they should be doing. I like that.
This would be a good rubric.
Huh?
A good rubric.
You like that one? All right, stage 3.
That's it.
Michelle.
That's the end. That's exactly what we are trying to get to the students. What are they supposed to be able to get from this plan?
This is your summative assessment. Say again, John.
This is your summative assessment.
Your summative assessment is based on that. If students have achieved the desired results, you should see the performance criteria, the evaluative criteria in their work. That should be the foundation for your summative assessments. Their path to getting there is the foundation for your formative assessment.
Your evidence and your performance tasks and all that, that's all.
Say again.
That would be all the formation that you could do would be in stage 2.
It's how you, it's where you are in the process of achieving that stage 3. All right, so since we've talked about assessments, how would you characterize the formative and summative assessment opportunities in this unit? Someone talk to me about formative and summative assessments.
I like that they actually, as an educator, they actually give you ideas in the actual, like examples of what the kids should know after each lesson that they have done. I haven't really seen that in our state. I think some of where we're going with understanding truly what a formative is and what it can be. So I like the idea that they give that frame. We kind of discovered that it's more of a framework versus, actually, at first we were kind of in discussion. I was like, well, how can that be if they're asking for the class to give something? But that's just what they should be able to do at the end. So as a teacher, they could use this to be able to determine how they want to do it to be able to get that formative result.
Anyone else?
It directly connects to the learning plan. The formative assessments at the end of each lesson go back to what you find as the basis for the summative assessment. Like, number 1 says, how does understanding of style and fashion transfer to an understanding of what makes an author's style? The formative assessment is to check for understanding of what style is and produce a class definition and how it could apply to writing. So everything connects to the end.
And I think there's formative embedded throughout the instruction. If you look at lesson program, there's questions embedded in that too that can be used to determine how to do that.
Anyone else?
I pretty much saw the same thing that she said. We're looking at each of the formative assessments. If you go back and you look at in the performance task, the last statement says students will write a
Any other thoughts about the structure of the unit, the things found in the units, the alignment, the coherence of the unit?
I like the student preconceptions and misconceptions, and that it put the information out there for the teacher, so that if they needed to correct information, they were in front of it instead of behind it.
But you can see how each component working together makes for a more comprehensive lesson.
Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna move forward. First, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, I want you in two groups. What we're gonna do is a text-based seminar on the Leading for Equity, Chapter 2 that you have. And we're gonna explore that chapter for issues that relate to curriculum and instructional framework. We're gonna ask ourselves, what were some of the issues with their curriculum? And how did we attempt to address some of those issues? So we're gonna go for a 10-minute break. When we come back, starting at Matisse, moving around the room and stopping here, that is going to be the first group. Starting at Gabe, moving around the room and stopping here will be the second group. So when you come back in 10 minutes, come back in those groups. We're only looking at, I think it's pages 36, starting on page 38, where it says uncovering inconsistencies, and moving through to page 46, stopping at integrate curriculum, differentiate instruction. What you're going to do is to examine and analyze for issues of curriculum and instruction. Those things that we've been talking about within this will, the syllabi, course instruction, those things connected and aligned to the curriculum and also the curriculum framework. So your discussion should include, one, what were the issues? And two, what were the solutions, or how did we attempt to solve those issues? One, what were the issues as it relates to curriculum? Two, how did he attempt to solve those issues? Any questions? You have 15 minutes. Remember the rules for a text-based seminar? I will refer to the text, challenge what others say, listen actively, build on what others say, expose or suspend your assumptions, emphasize clarification, amplification, and implications, converse directly, let the conversation flow as much as possible without raising hands, and watch your own airtime. The only thing that I would add to this is the thing I added last time. We have a habit of saying on page 38, and we talk about that, or we present that, and before anybody else can comment on that, somebody else in the group says, well, on page 42. So when you present an idea, when you take someone to a passage in the book, and you present that, and you give your ideas, before the next person takes you to another topic, another page, another idea, make sure that no one else in the group has something that they want to add or build on. Make sense? You may start.
With curriculum. At the road, yeah.
And the different grading scales they had for the testing.
They said instructional records were handwritten, no centralized data source.
So at the
That's
bottom
just
of page
how this is.
43, they list like a whole bunch of the issues, like
Right.
variability in the curriculum, lack of alignment, lack of diagnostic assessments.
Centralized data source.
Bottom of page
43.
Bottom of page 43.
Good job.
Just put the bottom of page 43. You refer to that in your notes, man.
Oh, well, thank you, sir.
Page 43.
Is that a highlighter or marker?
If you look at the bottom of page 43.
You know, it's amazing because in this, when you read this,
it dealt with, we was talking about being algebra one. You know,
Uh-huh.
all 8th graders taking algebra one in
Right.
section one and
Yep,
come back
exactly.
here, that's what, that was that motive.
Started, I think, with the lowest red zone schools, and they saw some growth, then they expanded.
I mean, one of the things that I really liked is that the district provided, the teachers in the summer, kindergarten teachers went to some extensive training to help them to adjust to the curriculum. And they were mandated to take over 100 hours of training over the summer. So when you spend that amount of time in PD, that is what truly makes the difference. You wanna make sure teachers first understand the content before they actually begin.
But I think more piggyback on what you're saying is that they had.
Okay, you need to speak louder.
They had a goal in mind, that they were not spending, wasting any time.
Correct.
It was focused in on the curriculum and the changes,
Yeah.
the expectations of what was going to occur, in each grade level, and that makes a difference.
I think one of the things that really stuck out to me was the mindset, that when they talked about the kindergarten wars, that, a lot of people in that district felt that kindergarten should just be for development and social.
They weren't even going to hold that.
Right, and like they only learned so many letters where, you know, the change had to come in where, you know, we have to teach our kindergartners those skills to be leaders by the end of kindergarten. And, a lot felt like they weren't ready or the expectations were too high. And I feel like we still hear that today in some of our schools, that, oh, our kids aren't gonna be ready to, you know, so it's a change of mindset as well.
But most pre-Ks now are teaching letters, alphabet and stuff like that, so they should come into kindergarten to be able to do that.
And then the first grade teachers commented on what they were able to do, because talking about what you said, that they normally learned how to read in first grade, but by the time they got to first grade, they were readers. And so the first grade teachers could do so much more.
And because they started at the bottom and focused on the top, they were able to develop and integrate curriculum after they realized the success of each. You know, a common curriculum that met the standards at the end and improved the standards from the beginning.
I think too, I like how they didn't have a cookie cutter approach with that. They started with the classes that needed it the most, the highest poverty areas, just to come in with a blanket policy and say, here's how we're gonna do it. They started with the neediest first and work from there.
And then the district supported them throughout the effort. On page 43, it says the district also created a new position of high purpose schools, the math content coaches, who work with the teachers to help them refine their teaching skills and share effective research-based practices.
So their PD was not just summer, it was embedded in job embedded, which was ongoing job embedded, which was really, really important.
So one thing, just because I deal with budgets, as we all do, I was looking for, and I know this isn't part of the assignment, how do they pay for all this?
Good question.
How did they secure money for the math content coaches? How did they secure money to go?
All those unnecessary books.
I guess so. But when you talk about going from, you know, to a, what they go, 12-to-1 ratio in kindergarten, you know, that's extra staff. So they must have made some sacrifices in other areas
Well,
to make sure they did all this.
They reallocated the money from the red zone and the green zone schools initially.
Yes.
Yeah, that was
So
the sale.
they talked about the federal funds, what they.
Yeah, so for 8 years, you took all the money and sent it to the red zones and the green zones. What?
Well,
On the corner with the boot? I mean, I don't know.
They took the money from the green zone and
I know.
reallocated more back.
And she's saying, like, what
I'm in
happened to the green
I get the
zone?
money taken away from me all the time. That's all I'm wondering, like, how do you?
Well, I think I read later on, he talked about how there was a lot of pushback from that. There was a lot of people who were upset in the green zone, but he made it clear that it was a community effort and that if you raised your community standards in all your schools,
Correct.
you're gonna raise the community, and I think that helped. I don't think he took all the money, but he did allocate.
When they
more
started talking about property values
Right,
going up.
right, and he talked
People
about.
started to soften.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're doing it for an 8-year period. That's a long time to
it's good that it came up that way, it's like, they don't give you 8 years.
But that also proves
Except-
that the change does not happen overnight.
Right, no.
Yes.
Well, the other side of that is on page 35, it says the annual peer pupil spending was around $11,000. So the green zone had $9,000 of that for however many years. $9,000 per student for however many years, while the red zone only had 2,000. So I mean, at some point they need to be like, oh, you have all of this stuff. Let's help the other people. That's the liberal of me. I don't know what they did, but I mean, it had been
How'd that happen, yeah.
unfair prior to that.
Well, I
To
think
the
before that,
opposite
they were giving it across the board, like every school got the same amount per student.
Correct.
And equally, they went from equality to equity.
Right.
You know, and that was the shift there. One of the things that I like too is on page 42, he talks about how when he was evaluating his math program, he brought in an outside organization to evaluate that math program, rather than just relying on people within the district. He brought in someone else and found the weaknesses there, that it wasn't aligned, there was not enough quality, and there were materials, but there was no consistency. And so I like that he brought in someone else to look at that.
I like the fact that whatever was working, he kept, and what he did, he abandoned.
Right.
Literacy wasn't working, so he kicked it out. But the math stuff, they weren't aligned, but he got that back in alignment, and he kept it, so.
Well, I think the strength in bringing in outside auditors, wasn't it two groups, like wasn't there a private group
Right.
and somebody from the university?
Yes.
When you do that, going back to that argument that they had about kindergarten, like, oh, they're not gonna be ready, that's not developmentally appropriate. When you bring in those outside auditors, it's very hard to argue with.
Yes, yes.
When they're saying, okay, yes, this is aligned, and you guys are doing the right thing, you're on the right track, how do you disagree with that?
I was trying to clarify the expectations on page 45, where it says, the teachers were expected to differentiate instruction based on the needs of their students, and all of you guys know, if you have a great relationship with your students, you can build from that and you can garner some student success. So clarifying your expectations is a great way to get to that point.
And then one of the things I liked about to piggyback off of what you said under clarifying expectations was they knew that there was gonna be some resistance with the teachers. So they made sure they identified who those teachers were and really kind of gave them some support to say this is, and make sure they followed the expectations.
Didn't they work with the union?
Yeah,
Wasn't it-
they
there
worked
was somebody
closely
union-
with
there
the
was a
union.
There was
So
a
they
union.
involved them, and
Yeah.
they had a voice in the process, which
Yeah.
increased the buy-in.
Correct.
from the teachers.
Because without that buy-in, it's very difficult to implement anything.
And they said as the students, showed some gains, that the buy-in got better because they could see the progress with the students.
I mean, because teachers want to know the why. Why is this important?
One thing I just had highlighted was they were not so set on what they were doing that they didn't realize that things didn't work. You know, they weren't so set on that.
Say that
this is
again?
they realized when stuff didn't work, okay, that was too much change, let's pull it back.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
the grading system.
Mhm.
The grading
Yeah.
There was so much
Like how at some schools, a 66 was an A,
Yeah.
whereas at other schools, it was an
It was
A.
a D or an F,
D.
I think. Yeah.
And then when the parents found out about that, they were, you know, what do you mean my child didn't get the same as the other children? But then when they went in and said, okay, here's the uniform grading scale, that didn't work, so they had to say, okay, we're gonna phase it in.
Phase it in.
Takes big people to realize if something's not working, say, oops, that's not working, and pull it back. And not just keep saying, I'm gonna make it work and keep trying to make it work. That's gutsy.
And that made me think a lot about equity, when there's assumptions about what certain kids could do and certain kids couldn't do.
Well, and it went back to the even though it were qualified, because of who those kids were, they were not allowed to take the advanced placement. And when they opened it up, parents had concerns that it would be watered down, but because you opened it up and it was for the kids who qualified, no matter who they were, scores kept going up.
Yep. Yep.
I can lift 2 more degrees.
Like, I need my wheel. On page 51, he would drop in on their sessions.
I mean, you said it in
And a teacher asked about the difference in class sizes, and he said, well, do you want to come teach over here with the smaller class sizes? Like, this is a piece.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, everyone this way. Every now and then somebody says something and there's a huge pause, so I think you may have exhausted the points that you want to make. So let me bring this part to a close. Here's what I want you to think about, and then I'm going to let you move, and then I want you to ultimately do it. Over this session, we talked about how your curriculum was formed or structured or produced. And then we compared that to those things that were listed in the initial will, in hopes that you would see some differences. And then also in hopes that you would start thinking about things that I could do to bring my curriculum into more alignment with what is being prescribed in the initial will. Then we took a look at a unit of study, and understanding you may have some issues with style, but the purpose was, were there things you saw in the unit of study that you think might be beneficial to your teachers, to your school? The way they structured it, the way they thought about it. We then moved to this particular case study with Montgomery County. And the issue is, did they or were they experiencing issues that you are experiencing, and how did they attempt to address them? And what ways did they use that you could potentially use in your school? So now you have 3 things that you should be thinking about: how yours is formed and how it compares to the initial will, things that you saw in the structure of the Massachusetts Department of Education unit of study, and the approaches that you see in the text Leading for Equity that you just finished. What I want you to do now is to go back and find that document that we started working with yesterday that had the improvement opportunities on the right-hand side. Think about all of those things, and of those things, what improvement opportunities do you now see for your leadership and for your school? So write 3 or 4 things that you think, out of all of the conversation you just had, would help to move your school forward as it relates to curriculum and framework, syllabi and instructional aligned to curriculum frameworks. Make sense? All right, do that.
So we're writing this on well-designed curriculum framework?
On the syllabi, instructional material.
On syllabi, the well-designed.
Again, just the improvement opportunities, just a few ideas of things that you want to pursue that you think might benefit you. There is no need for consensus building. This is what you want, so you don't have to let you don't have to let anybody talk you out of your ideas. If you want to put clarifying learning intentions, you put clarifying learning intentions. Okay, this way. We will come back to this at the end of this session and also at the end of the day, because what we hope is that as you go through this, you have been generating ideas for potential projects that you want to undertake in your school that would move you closer to the realization of this wheel. It doesn't have to be a consensus.
I didn't say that.
It's okay if her idea is slightly different than, okay, all right,
She just gets excited.
okay.
For me, it's
I just saw Stephanie got ready to write something, and Michelle said, no, and then Stephanie stopped writing. And then Stephanie started writing again, and Michelle said, no. And every time Stephanie wanted to write something, Michelle convinced her that what she was about to write was not a good idea.
clarifying what you want.
Okay, all right.